Chapter 22. Evil Eye followed the bloody footsteps of Lupu as they descended deeper into the catacombs. Occasional undead came into view, only to be dispatched by what could only be described as seamless teamwork. "They're like my roses," Evil Eye considered when the pair silently went in two different directions in the same moment and dispatched the contents of two rooms at once. As a mere observer, Evil Eye remained behind and checked each room, and each left her gawking. Seconds was all it took, and dozens of undead were in pieces, zombies in one room, skeletons in another. But more troubling to Evil Eye was the intent for so many corpses. Most necromancers wanted only enough servants to attend to them while they conducted their research in private, delving into forbidden arts because of their own private obsessions. A few sought to raise armies intending some kind of conquest. But the looming shadow of the death spiral, a thing she held out hope against, was more and more obvious the further in they went. An undead that ended a life, created a new undead, a few hundred, a few thousand, could potentially turn an entire city if they got within the walls. They're tearing apart years of work before my eyes, and if they didn't, what would have happened to Eranthal? Evil Eye had no idea, but it wasn't good. Guards mostly used spears and swords, far from the best weapons against the undead. The possibility of success seemed all the more likely as they continued to descend ever farther and found more and more rooms full of corpses either already animated, or just waiting to be. Shadows flickered over their bodies from the firelight as they came at last to the deepest depths of the catacombs. "At least we haven't found any armored undead." That would have been really ominous. Evil Eye kept her chuckle confined to her own mind while the pair of adventurers stalked the halls in front of her. "This should be the final level, shouldn't it?" Ines asked and pointed toward the stairs going down into the depths. "Yes, I think so, but nobody has had really accurate maps of these places for a long time." Evil Eye looked up at him and answered with stars in her eyes hidden by her mask. "Good, stay behind me, they know we're here by now. They don't seem to have prepared an escape route for themselves, so this is their last stand," Ines said and put a hand on both the shoulders of Evil Eye and Lupus Regina. Evil Eye suppressed a shiver of delight, but her consummate professionalism wouldn't let her remain silent. "Sir Moman, you have excellent armor, but no shield. What will you?" He cut her off with a squeeze of his hand on her shoulder. "Trust me." Evil Eye fell silent. Lupu leaned back and looked to his left side where Evil Eye stood and said with a little titter, "Yeah, what Moman said, trust him, watch this, it's going to be good." The shouting that made its way up the stairs confirmed the truth of his assessment, and he began to walk down the stairs. "Why so slowly? Wouldn't a charge give them less time to prepare?" Evil Eye asked. "Fear," Ines replied. "They're already prepared, but fear will weaken them. We've stalked and eliminated the entire catacombs. They only know we're coming because nobody else has checked in and nobody coming up has made it back. Though they may have heard some noises of violence. Now they can only listen while some unknown force stalks in on them. Panic makes haste, haste makes for bad decisions. It's basic strategy." "Yeah, basic strategy." Lupu echoed and stuck her tongue out at Evil Eye with a playful wink. Evil Eye's estimation of Moman went up another rank. The stairs were not endless, though they were long, and the noise grew to a tumult and finally began to ebb. The trio all knew why. The noise of Ines's footsteps was reaching them. Down far ahead in the dim stairs, they saw the bright glow of orange light, and the faint smell of lamp oil reached their noses. The two great swords of the Dark Hero came out slowly to the front of Ines's body, but in a stance Evil Eye had never seen any warrior use before. The pommels were held one end over the other so that the sword points were vertical as if it were one long-edged staff. She cocked her head, and looked to Lupu beside her when the woman fell back behind Moman. The blood-soaked cleric only rubbed her hands together and gave Evil Eye a knowing little look. The unknown was made known when they reached the base of the stairs. "Fire!" a voice from beyond shouted, and both fireballs and arrows launched en masse toward the Dark Hero. "No!" Evil Eye wanted to cry out, "He's destined to save many lives. To do great things, even he can't take so many hits." She thought as his body was hammered by scores of arrows and scorched by flames, and the Dark Hero died to protect them. Or, that is what she should have seen. Instead she saw the meaning of his unknown stance. His greatsword spun like a chariot wheel locked into place, Arrows were knocked aside and fireballs failed to so much as warm his spinning blade. It moved with such speed in front of her that even the adamantite-ranked Evil Eye couldn't follow its spinning motion. It even caused the humans behind the rows of armored undead to hesitate. From the back center, one of them, full of fear and awe and disbelief, had enough sense through his terror to give orders to the stunned necromancers. Again. Hit him. Fire. He can't stop them all. The disciple screamed and fireballs flew again, while undead archers reloaded, aimed, and fired in unison. Still the sword spun, and the dark hero did not move from his place in the door. He doesn't advance because as long as he stands there, they can't hurt us. True heroism. Of the highest order. Evil Eye thought with admiration that grew ever higher. Her own acute senses were at work while she waited for the ambush to simply run out of mana and arrows. The sound of breaking wooden shafts was as steady as dry pine needles underfoot on a hike. It seemed without end. The constant shouts of fireball came on again and again, and yet to her dismay, Sir Moman did not even seem to tire, let alone miss. His towering, powerful body blocked all access to herself and Lupu, and the cleric, true to the nature Evil Eye had recognized, couldn't help herself. She leaned against the wall and began to clean her bloody nails. "How much longer, do you think?" Lupu casually asked. I don't know. If they have mana-enhancing items, a few minutes, then that'll be the end of the fireballs. The skeletons, if they have more arrows we don't see, maybe a minute more. Evil Eye answered the radiant red-stained, red-headed adventurer. "Sounds about right. Guess you're not bad at this stuff, huh?" Lupu asked her. Evil Eye could only stare from behind her mask. "I'm one of the strongest adventurers in the world." "Oh?" Lupu looked at her with sudden interest. "Seriously?"
Yes.
Evil Eye answered, briefly turning to look again at the way the dark hero ripped through every attack without any effort whatsoever.
"Or, I was."
"That's more like it," Lupu chuckled, and curling her fingers over her palm, she brought them up and blew on them with a cocky expression taking shape with the upturned corners of her lips. Even Lakew's couldn't do this without all of her swords, and she would have had to do something else against the magic casters. Evil Eye understood very clearly that Sir Moman could do this was something she would have deemed impossible even after seeing the remains of the skeletal dragons. The bright light and heat of the fireballs began to die down as magic casters began to run out of mana, and the arrows tapered off a moment later. "What are you waiting for?" a robed man shrieked and pointed toward the entrance. The crypt core was a single wide open space with single stone coffins in place around the room. The faces carved on them were chiseled and handsome, like the dead wanted to be remembered, but likely only idealized representations of who they were.
"Get them," he shouted.
And the armored undead dropped their bows and took up swords. Their bone-white jaws fell open in screams that could not exist but for magic, and their feet clattered on the stone as they charged with swords raised high. "Now, Lupu, go, play, have fun." Evil Eye heard Sir Moman order, and the pair broke from the entrance. Moman charged with great swords swinging in massive, wide arcs, what anyone envisioned when they thought of the word heroic knight. But Lupu was almost wolf-like, leaning far forward, so far that more than once her hands were used to draw her along in a bizarre animalistic fighting style as savage as the wolf the girl reminded Evil Eye of. Her red braids flew behind her and she barely even used her mace. Cleric. She's a cleric. A cleric should be back here. Evil Eye again reminded herself and watched the two tear through scores of armored undead like their iron and steel armor wasn't even there. The swords swept 4 or 5 aside with every swing, and the clattering fearless masses of the undead died a second time before the onslaught. Lupu battered heads from shoulders or with a palm that had to be harder than steel itself, smashed into chests with such violence that the undead flew back and broke their comrades into a jumble of bones that rattled and shattered on the floor or against the walls. It wasn't lost on Evil Eye that the pair moved along the sides rather than in the center. The undead were forced to split their numbers, and it put them on paths to surrounding the now manaless necromancers. "With me here at the entrance, they can't go anywhere, they're trapped between a rock and a sharp, hard place." Evil Eye just held her hands together like a prayer as she praised the dark hero in her own mind.
"So cool. He's amazing,"
she squeaked even in her own mind as the duo reached the back. The necromancers had mere moments of terror for the most part, half fell with the first swing of the sword, bodies severed in half at the waist, went flying and spinning in all directions. Those unfortunates who survived to land in pain on the stone, tried to crawl away.
Some,
missing parts of their arms,
could not even do that.
Lupu simply punched, and heads exploded.
Her mace was entirely unnecessary,
and within mere moments,
there was only one man left alive.
The red-coated cleric approached to finish him off, cracking her knuckles and staring down at him as he scrambled away like a crab through the blood and viscera of his mutilated deceased companions. The sound of slapping hands striking bright crimson puddles and splashing them about was accompanied by his cries. "Mercy! Mercy!
Please, I surrender. I surrender.
Don't kill me.
Don't hurt me. I have information. I can help you."
He held out a shaking hand from down on his back. Lupu glanced up toward the dark hero. He whipped his swords out, scattering bloody viscera over the walls and casting off the red stains. Satisfied, he sheathed the swords on his back again. "Knock him out and search him for now. Let the authorities have him. He can die just as well later as he can now."
Evil Eye heard Moman say, and approved of his judgment.
A sound punch from Lupu later, and a limp man lay crumpled in a robe stained red by the failure of himself and his fellows. Crouched over his body, she rummaged through his things and pulled out a delicate-looking jeweled circle. I guess this might be what they're looking for."
"Mission accomplished then," Ein said.
"We'll go through the other rooms, see if there are any remaining living captives,
then head back."
Spoken like a proper adamantite-ranked hero. Evil Eye confirmed to herself, and followed as they carried out the last of the cleanup. Hours later, Evil Eye was telling the story of the operation to the entire guild from atop the dais, to the crowd of adventurers below, and concluded it all by holding aloft the crown of wisdom. "Mission accomplished," Evil Eye said, and giving it back to Sir Moman, she watched him hand it over to Gazif Stranov. "You may have saved this city and its people from a death spiral, from whom knows what kind of terrible undead rising, and I am eternally grateful." The hero decked in the kingdom's treasures replied. "Sir Moman, the reward for this will be beyond anything I have the power to give. Come to the capital as soon as you can, and I will have to let the king himself settle on what to offer you."
"I would be honored to receive the king's favor," Ines answered, "but saving the people is what anyone would have done.
What higher calling is there for an adventurer?" Approving, awed mutterings filled the floor below. Pride swelled the hearts of the adventurers below at the declaration and praise for their profession, and more than one engraved his words on their hearts. "Nonetheless, a reward is due, and a reward you will have," Gazif answered and extended a heavy hand. The handshake between the two was almost like the joining of allies or the forming of a new friendship in the eyes of those who saw it, and when it broke, Pluton Einsak approached. He held up a pair of adamantite plates. "I have wanted to do this for a long time, and I doubted I'd ever get a chance to. An adamantite plate is almost as rare as feathers on a fish, and I am proud to bestow them now. These are marks not of what you've done, but of what you can do. You stand at the peak, and from that peak, you can see all that needs to be done. I pray you do it, and do it well." He then put one around the neck of the red-haired Lupu, who flashed two fingers out in a V for victory sign to the crowd that was already cheering down below. She winked at them, and the story of the beautiful Princess Lupu was born into legend. The cheers redoubled when Moman lowered his head and allowed the adamantite plate to be placed around his neck. "Team Axel, welcome to the world of living legends," Lake Hughes said and approached with an outstretched hand of her own. "I look forward to working with you in the future." Ines shook her hand with gentle courtesy, "And I with you. As my senior, I hope you will advise me when I need it." He watched as her eyes blinked at the profound humility of the hero who, by all rights, should have embraced the arrogance of the strong. Better, Ines thought, to show deference to seniors who have been on the job longer, who knew being a salaryman would provide so much useful knowledge. I guess some things are the same in every world. With Lakew's stunned to silence, Ines turned his attention to Gazif. "I will take you up on your offer, but it has been a busy time, so I hope you won't mind if I take some time to rest and to celebrate first. It won't be long, however, I can promise you that." "Good, till we meet again," Gazif said, and they all began to break up. Evil Eye, however, lingered. She put her hand on Moman's arm and looked up at him. "Will I see you again?" she asked in what she hoped was not a lovesick voice. "Ah, yes, of course. We are fellow adventurers of the highest rank, I would imagine we will." He turned to walk away, but then it hit him. Wait, is there something there? He wondered, and recalled the way Booker Bakushigama had once let her eyes linger on him,
and he'd wondered the same thing. Back then he'd said nothing. This time, he chose a different path. But, he added, I hope it will be soon, Evil Eye, he said succinctly, and Lupus Regina fell in beside him. Yay. Evil Eye felt the girlish excitement come to her at his final added words. He says little, but means it more. What a man, she thought, and when Lupu turned to look back at her and gave a taunting wink, Evil Eye didn't even let it bother her. I can't wait. The vampire mage thought, though the question she most feared also came up. What will he say, or do, when I have to reveal what I am? A man that righteous, surely he despise the undead. She set the question aside as one that would only ruin her hopes, but it was one she knew would need to be answered someday. Just not today. Chapter 23 Epilogue. Nina and the rest of the former Swords of Darkness enjoyed the hospitality of the village, deciding to delay their trip back to Carney and enjoy some of the money they'd gotten from their latest and last reward for adventuring. They splurged. Peter now had several pieces of enchanted equipment thanks to the generosity of Sir Moman, as did Lacroute, Dine, Britta, and herself. There had even been enough money left for drinks, and so, no reason to hurry. So every village they stopped in, they spent liberally, making themselves very popular with poor, nameless villagers on their long circuitous route back to Carney and the work that would await them there. But Lupu's words hung in Nina's mind, which was part of why she didn't mind the delay. Every night, she recited the lessons she had learned from the adamantite-ranked cleric. And it was because she was up late at night in one poverty-stricken village, that she was the one to hear the scream, the slap, and the tearful sobbing. Nina stood up from the table where she was drinking and reciting lessons and bolted out the door expecting to find some little domestic brawl, and instead found a crude carriage and some armed guards in cheap leather armor. Come on. You're lucky I like you, I only slapped you a little bit. Just be good for me and if you're lucky I'll even give you a bonus. You should be glad of the chance to bear my child. The nasally voice, the entitled pronouncement, it was the sort heard all over Riesties. The nobles of this particular area were not particularly well off, but they were still nobles, though even at a glance she knew the wayfish man in the dirty clothing that had obviously once been quite fine, was not actually the lord. The local lord's son. Nina realized. Don't get involved. The thought came to her as her eyes darted around her. Nobody else had emerged from their homes, and she knew why. They are thinking the same thing. Just like when the lord of my village took her. Lupu's words to her returned again, the mocking, taunting truths that were ground into her like salt into open wounds, the instinctive fear of the nobles that was ingrained in every peasant man and woman from infancy was like ice in her veins that froze her blood and compelled her to do nothing. On the ground in front of her though, a pretty young peasant girl whose dress was already torn and face red from a slap looked tearfully to where Nina stood. The girl was young, quaking in fear. Please, my lord, don't take her. A very thin older man pleaded. He and his wife knelt inside their door and their hands were up and pleading, show mercy. We paid our taxes, didn't we? Yes, but it wasn't really enough. The least you can do is obey like good dogs. He nudged the blonde girl's leg. Yes, dogs, and she's just a bitch. He laughed at his own joke. Now come on, you. He reached down and tugged the girl at the wrist, dragging her through the dust. The slender little blonde yelped in pain when she was scraped over the dust. Nina's blood had turned from ice to fire as the advice of the adamantite adventurer sent her over the edge. Hey! Let her go, she shouted, and the noble, the villagers, even the peasant girl, froze at the unspoken disbelief that someone had said the impossible. Excuse me. The lordling exclaimed, affronted, don't you know who I am? I'm Lord Philip, these are my lands, peasants, and therefore this is my business, not yours. Stupid adventurers. Philip cursed, don't even know the faces of the people who rule the places they visit. As soon as I'm the official lord, I'll put a tax on their passing through my lands and make them come pay respects to me personally. As if that settled the matter, he turned to his guards. Take the bitch and put her in the carriage. Do I have to do everything myself? He snapped, ignoring Nina again. The old fear came up in Nina again. In the light of the torches of the night, the young girl's fearful face was lit up bright as the sun, and Nina's old anger drowned her peasant fears in their coming sea of rage. I said let her go, you piece of shit. Nina brought her staff up, the words of Moman echoed in her mind, protecting the people is an adventurer's highest calling. Put that one down. Philip shrieked and waved a hand toward Nina. Magic arrow. Nina cast her spell, and arrows of light ripped from the air to pierce the guard's cheap armor. Nina's shouting had drawn the attention of the rest of her friends. The chaos drew out the other 3 guards from where they were out of sight on the other side of the carriage, and the rest of the village, hearing the unexpected chaos, began to poke heads out of doors. Lit by torches, the former Swords of Darkness needed to know only one thing, that their teammate was in trouble. Luke Root's arrows pierced a guard through the throat. Peter clashed briefly with another who clumsily waved a spear with a shout more of fear than of spirit. He ducked beneath, and buried his sword to the hilt in the man's guts. Britta handled the last, avoiding the spear, bringing her mace down to break the wood. Then while the guard looked at it in brief dumbfounded confusion, she spun and smashed her new mace into his face. He crumpled with a sickening crunch of bone and a thud into the dust. Nina ran with a bound. She shrieked to the noble, raised her staff, and began to hit the young man in the face and head. Unused to warrior combat, she would have gotten derision from any instructor, but she got only blood and screams of pain from the Lord. Holding her staff in 2 hands, she brought it up and down on the scrawny youth's head. Nina shouted and screamed her hatred so greatly that she drowned out his screams of pain, spattering blood over the fallen girl. He dropped into the dust in his desperate failed effort to protect himself. It wasn't until she felt a pair of hands pull her back and she began to breathe deeply, heavily, that she stopped seeing red, and saw what she'd done. The head was a caved-in wreck. The young man who identified himself as Philip was very, very dead. Blood stained the ground in the trembling body of the peasant girl. No more. No goddamn more, Nina shouted her rage at the uncaring sky. Looking at the dead guards and dead lordling, those who had seemed invincible had been shown to be frail. The godlike status of lords in the eyes of peasants took a mortal blow. And with the fatal wound, the girl's father and mother approached the dead guards and picked up the fallen weapons. Thus was born a battle cry. No more. Became a shout that threatened to split the sky. Ainz stepped through the gate that took him back to Nazarick. Lupu had cleared the hall and passed on his orders that none were to be there for his return, as he had a private matter to attend to that required the utmost concentration. Lupu followed him all the way to the treasury, through the various traps and past the statues of the supreme beings that had come and gone. She lingered there a moment, to look at her maker. When she did, Ainz waited too. He would be proud of how you have performed your duties, Ainz promised her. Thank you, my lord, Lupus Regina said and stared up at the great black werewolf king. I loved him like a father, and tried to model myself after him. I see a great deal of him in you. He was playful, whimsical, and ferocious all at once, but a very good friend. Ainz answered and touched the open hand of the werewolf statue. The open hand with its terrible claws were meant to be in a posture of ferocity, but to Ainz, it was like an extended hand of friendship. I hope wherever he has gone, he is well. Me too, my lord, but I am glad that you are the one who stayed. Lupus Regina replied, and followed him the rest of the way to the treasury. When they were at the door he asked her, Tell me, have you ever met Pandora's actor? No, my lord, never. Lupus Regina shook her head slowly, her shining black and white maid outfit swayed with her, the slit portion of the dress exposing her long right leg up to the thigh. He is unique. He is my creation, Ainz replied. Oh God, I was such a tunibio when I made that one. What the hell am I going to face? Please, oh please be normal. He cried out in his mind and opened the massive double doors. Glittering treasures of gold, priceless items, things that even alone would greatly enrich any kingdom to possess them. Mere flavor text in the game, they had come to reality now. But all of that, he ignored. For there in the center of the room, was the Beast King himself, Lupus Regina's creator. Father. The battle-maid thought in an instant, her eyes wet with tears, and before Ainz could even speak to tell Pandora's actor not to do that, the area guardian of the treasury returned to his natural form, black pits for eyes and mouth and noseless face. Bright yellow uniform with buckles and buttons, a red shirt and black tie and a flawless black and red military cap that arched at the front and had a short brim coming out over his forehead. The guardian took a bow, his left hand sweeping dramatically in front of his waist as he did so. Mine apologize, mine Frau. I should not have taunted one so lovely with so heartbreaking an image. Pandora's actor exclaimed. Oh no. He's even more cringy than I feared. Ainz broke out into a cold sweat.
Lupus Regina wiped her eyes and glared. "That was mean," she said and crossed her arms. "Ja. Mine regrets. I but thought it a mere prank. But I should have known better. Were mine Vater to be gone, to see his like and learn it false would have broken mine heart." Pandora's actor said, and only then did he slowly straighten up. "Enough," Ein said in a slow, drawn-out way. "No more pranks like that. Now I've come here for a reason. Vater, if you need anything of the treasury, it is yours to claim and for me to inventory. I live but to serve you," Pandora's actor declared in a long, loud voice, and raised a hand to his chest and extended another out in a grand dramatic gesture. "Uck. All right, this is the important part. Ignore the cringe, and just do it," Heinz told himself and took a deep breath. "Pandora's actor, is your loyalty to me as the undead creator, or is your loyalty to me absolute and total, no matter what?" Near at hand, Lupus Regina took on a subtle defensive stance with one foot back, ready to charge and transform if she had to. Created to buy time, she had no chance against Pandora's actor in a fight. Even if he were not the strongest guardian, he was nonetheless a level 100, several times stronger than her. Heinz reflexively checked his XP rating. It had gone up considerably with the recovery of the Crown of Wisdom, like he'd received a quest bonus, but it was still a long way from level 101. Still, if it comes down to it, I can handle him. Especially with Lupus Regina to buy me time. The doppelganger cocked his head in confusion and lowered his arms, the sense of drama gone. He didn't even speak any German. "Father, you are my maker. My loyalty to you is beyond even my loyalty to these treasures or this tomb. No matter what, I am yours." "But why? Why would you ask such a thing?" Ein slowly took off his helmet and stepped forward. "I don't know if this is permanent, and I know we don't have any race change items, and I still find it hard to believe it worked. But..." He touched his human face and traced his fingers over it. "This is me, for now. Do you still stand by your words?" "Father, who else knows?" Pandora's actor asked with bated breath. "Only Lupus Regina, for now. In time I will inform the others, when I can be sure none of them would break loyalty. The hatred of humans their creators gave them may be far stronger than I know. So I must prepare." Heinz replied and gave a deep sigh. "Now, your answer?" Pandora's actor dropped to one knee, bowed his head and covered his heart with his long-fingered hand. "To you, always you, no matter what your form, you are my maker. The one who stayed." "Good," Heinz answered and put a hand on his head. "Now, about why I have come. I learned a great deal about the outside world, and because of the danger I yet face, I require many more servants." "You wish to offer great rewards?" Pandora's actor waved at the endless treasures. Heinz then turned his mind toward the workers he learned of, men and women who would take on almost any job, on the edge of society, with no security and no options, and no way to change that. He shook his head. "No, I wish to send them an invitation, and make an offer to them." "An offer, my lord?" Pandora's actor asked. "Yes, an offer they can't refuse," Heinz answered with relief and resolve blended into one. Volume 2 Chapter 1. The wealth of the tomb was beyond counting. Literally. "What treasures will satisfy this offering, mine Vater?" Pandora's actor asked with an upward gaze that, even faceless, seemed somehow to bear an air of eagerness. Interesting, despite his featureless state, little things about himself reveal a great deal about how he feels. "Is this because I created him?" Heinz asked the question of himself and had no ready answer. It was a minor mystery, but on the surface it seemed probable to the otherwise socially awkward former salaryman. "Have you used your King of the Fort job skill since coming to the New World?" Heinz asked. 9. Mine Vater. My last instruction was to use it only when Nazarick called for gold, and this has not happened since our coming. Pandora's actor answered, and this too gave Heinz pause for thought. I see. Heinz answered and brought his mailed hand up to stroke his chin while he thought. So that too differs from the game, at least that alleviates one concern. We won't be running a deficit keeping Nazarick under my control. Maintaining a guild base in the game was expensive. The shitty devs really stuck it to the guilds that way. How many times did we have to go on dangerous raids just to ensure we could afford the upkeep on it, prior to my cash shop item giving him Lord of the Fort? Too many times, far too many times. The reflective moment passed and he turned his attention back to the kneeling Pandora's actor.
Then how much money can you create? Heinz couldn't keep his relief at bay, and that in and of itself was enough to slow Pandora's actor's answer. Ah, my lord. He reached into the pocket of his dimensional space and drew out two heavy-looking silk sacks, each roughly the size of a watermelon, and he sat them on the dark stone floor. The clinking of coins broke the silence of the moment. One is of platinum, the other is of gold, and I can produce this once every 30 days, mein Vater, and smaller sums can be taken in their place, should there ever be a need. Pandora's actor seemed unable to refrain from an over-the-top gesture, thrust his arms open like he was going to embrace the sacks of coins, and Heinz wanted to die inside. I made this tunibio? What was I thinking? German. Drama? Okay, the uniform is very cool, but the rest? Why? The excessive dramatic posing. No, just no. Heinz's mind ran like a sprinter away from the proof of his tunibio past, and he felt a longing for the emotional suppressor of his former undead body. To feel nothing, what a blessing. He mentally sighed and said with quiet desperation, "Do not speak German in front of me. Ever," Heinz emphasized after he finished speaking, and he could feel the surprise from the NPC. For a moment, he wondered if he had wounded the blank-faced doppelganger. I made him, after all, I must take responsibility. Heinz acknowledged while restraining his own sigh. Pandora's actor, you are as I made you, this makes you something of a son. Therefore you must become more than I have made you. You must grow in ways that you have chosen for yourself. Show me what I did not create. Well, that was a load of bullshit if ever I said any. Heinz reflected, but Pandora's actor ate it up. Ja. Yes, father, I will show you what you wish to see, I swear it is your son. The doppelganger replied while Heinz took up the coins. I know you will. Heinz answered in turn, and taking up the coins, he tossed them into his pocket dimension. He then turned to leave, and as he did he added, practice your imitation of my former shape, I may need it. Pandora's actor snapped up to a rigid posture and gave a crisp salute with his hand canted over the brim of his cap. Yes, father, he emphasized as the door slowly closed behind the retreating Heinz and Lupus Regina. When they were alone and leaving the area, Lupus Regina was quick to ask, what next, master? The arena. Heinz answered in an instant. There was no need to explain what he was going to do there, but on the long walk, that didn't stop Lupus Regina from asking another question of her master. Lord Mayor, or Lord Cocytus, master? There was a little shudder in the battlemaid's voice when she asked the question. Are you concerned? Heinz asked with a downward glance at the maid as she followed at his side. The sound of feet over stone was answer enough, but the battlemaid chose to speak for herself instead. I can't win, master. The red-haired beauty was far from cowardly in nature, thus making her words even more profound. Do you believe I could lose? Asked Heinz. It was a direct question, and one Lupus Regina felt like a hammer on her heart. I believe victory would be very difficult, master. But I believe you could win. However, if you want to know who I think would be more easily defeated, I would say Lord Cocytus. Lupus Regina replied, her eyes turned down with what might as well have been great interest in the stone beneath their feet as they walked. Why Cocytus? Warrior Take Mikazuchi gave him a great many immunities to magic. Heinz asked with a very curious interest. His inner gamer came out in earnest at the unexpected reply from the battlemaid. It seemed to contradict all reason. Mayor is such a sweet little boy, nervous, soft-natured. By contrast, Cocytus is a paramount warrior. Shouldn't it be the other way around? He wondered. Master, if Lord Mayor were to turn on you, he would call for help from the other guardians who he would think might help. But Lord Cocytus, if he were to want to fight you, he would try to do so by himself. Lupus Regina replied and closed her sun-like yellow eyes that glimmered in the shadowy walk of the hall of the Great Tomb. I see, that is a fair point. I will be informing Cocytus, which by the way, means I need to do something else first, Heinz said and stopped in his tracks before activating the message spell. Mayor, Aura, I have a task for the two of you, Heinz said with all the authority he could muster. Yeah, what is it, Lord Heinz? Aura exclaimed. At once, Lord Heinz. Mayor exclaimed with a subdued, nervous eagerness that characterized the young male dark elf. I want you both to go to Carney Village. There is a forest near there. Aura, I want you to tame every monster that could threaten the village. Mayor, I want you to prepare to expand the village considerably. Tell them you are an emissary of Ainzul Gaon, and they will cooperate in every way. Fix the roads, build more homes, prepare training grounds suitable for adventurers and for soldiers. If they request anything in particular be built, listen to their representatives within reason. If there are useful beasts taken that can help with the construction, their use is permitted. Go at once. Do you have any questions? None, Lord Ainz. The twins exclaimed, and Ainz killed the link. There, that will remove said problem and get a task done too, Ainz murmured under his breath. Unsurprisingly, he felt his heart rate begin to ease. The notion of having to fight either of those two precious children of Bukabakushigama was such that, however unlikely it was, facing it as even a possibility was still too much. When they reached the now empty arena, Ainz sent out a message to Cocytus to join him, and straight away it so happened. The insectoid ice monster stood tall and strong, weapon in hand and ready to serve the one who stayed. "My lord," the guardian said and knelt. Head bowed and weapon upright with the butt of it planted in the sands. This, I need to get this over with, I need to. Whatever happens, happens. I put off the twins, but I can't put everything off, and I need his help as a warrior now. Cocytus, who am I to you? Ainz asked from beneath his onyx-colored warrior helmet. The greatest of the supreme beings. The one who stayed. Cocytus's answer was so reflexive it was hard to imagine any deception in the words, but still, sweat sprang to Ainz's forehead. And am I the Ainz that you know? Have you any doubt? Ainz asked, and the guardian raised his head without thought or permission. Cocytus searched the body which stood before him, though covered in magic armor. The importance of his master's question, and the mystery behind it, was such that he could not help but raise his head. Lupus Regina stood a pace behind at his left hand. Her body was relaxed, but ready as if she were prepared to fight. What goes? His formal warrior mind asked. Lord Ainz was tall and broad of shoulder in his enchanted, conjured armor given to him by the spell-perfect warrior. But there was more. It troubled his icy heart, and yet the question demanded an answer, so he moved his mandibles and spoke. None. You are the one who stayed. Cocytus replied, to whom all my loyalty and my life belongs. And is this true no matter what? Even if I should change? Ainz cut to the quick, just rip the damn band-aid off. He told himself, and waited. No matter what, my lord. Cocytus responded. Commanding words were the next to follow, and with them, Ainz's hands came up to the sides of his helmet. What happens next is a secret. You are forbidden from speaking of this to anyone. Master, I obey. Cocytus answered in turn. No criticism came to him for raising his head without permission, and therefore he concluded that it was a not unexpected response, however impertinent it might have been considered at some other time. A moment later he understood why, as the helmet came off and was held in front of his master's chest, and Cocytus found himself looking into the tanned face set beneath black hair, and brown eyes stared back down at him. Illusion? Cocytus asked, cocking his head. He saw Lupus Regina slide 1 foot behind her, turning to the side as if she were readying herself for an immediate fight. No. No. And she knows. The guardian recognized. It is not, is it, my lord? Cocytus asked with a calm and even voice. Ainz let out a sigh and relaxed at the guardian's answer. He set the helmet under one arm and scratched his dark hair. At his side, he felt Lupus Regina begin to relax. No, it isn't. During my visit to the village, as best I can figure, whatever spell they cast, reacted with my world item. I was changed into this. I see. Cocytus replied. That is why she is prepared to fight. My loyalty was in question. As an insectoid, he didn't have the same inflections as a human, but Ainz could still detect the subtle implication that he was wounded by doubt, and like a father that has unintentionally hurt his child, Ainz felt his heart go out to the faithful guardian. Ainz yanked off his mail glove and cast it to the sand, scattering granules with the force of his toss. Then bare-handed, he reached out and put a palm on the frozen forehead. It was cold to the touch, pleasant, really. Then he said to the guardian, you did nothing wrong, Coctius. Nothing you have ever done has caused me to question your loyalty. This is the kind of uncertainty that comes with a body like this one, and I merely acted according to it. I see. I understand, Master. Cocytus responded with a noticeable relaxing of his icy form. How can I help? One side effect is that I can now gain more power than before. Ainz began the sentence in a professional manner, but by the end, a broad smile traced its way over his face as his boyish inner RPG grind gamer came to the fore. Your creator gave you the ability to summon high-level monsters, did he not? My dueling partner skill. Yes, my lord. Cocytus answered clearly, but inside his head was spinning. His lord was already among the most powerful beings in this world, and yet there was the possibility of more? I am privileged above all others, to bear witness to the growth of my master's power. He thought with reverence. But another thought troubled him. Few of the others know. Cocytus guessed. Ainz's smile fled, his lips became tight and he gave a somber nod. No, they do not. Lupus Regina knows, her nose found the truth. I just informed Pandora's actor. Now you. Some of those who reside here have a deep hatred for humans that may transcend their loyalty to myself as the master of the tomb. I will reveal this slowly, to a precious few at a time. Ainz explained his intentions, and Cocytus nodded. Part of the Guardian of the Fifth Floor wanted to immediately say, none would ever be disloyal to a supreme being. But he knew quite well that the hatred for humans ran deep in some of them. The fact that the invasion of the tomb had included humans was not forgotten. It was still an unthinkable thought, and yet he thought it anyway. So you prepare. Cocytus recognized his master's intent, and his admiration swelled for his master to heights he had not known he could achieve. Yes, that's my intention. My own summons can gain me some experience, and I can gain some out in the wider world. However, that is very low. If the rules of the old world hold, I can gain more experience by way of strong opponents summoned by someone else. Ainz took his hand from Cocytus's frozen forehead and held a finger pointed out a few inches from the Guardian's face. You. Arch sat down at the expensive table with her parents. It was smooth and polished, and had over a dozen chairs, though it had not held any but the 5 members of her household for quite some time. Her somewhat overweight father traced a finger over his brown mustache. He wasn't looking at his daughter, he was looking at the pouch she put on the table between them. His fingers twitched, eager to snatch it up, only the hand of his wife on his shoulder kept him from doing so. Her long, angular face was slowly becoming wrinkled through age and worry. Her once glowing golden hair was beginning to whiten, more from stress than age, as Arch figured it. Arch rested her hands folded one over the other on the table in front of her. Father, this has to stop. You can't keep spending money as if you have more of it coming in. You don't. Her father's plump face darkened. Yes, I do, you just brought some. Father, I'm an adventurer, a worker, I could die out there, or the jobs could dry up, what then? She opened her hands and spread her arms out, imploring with him to listen. She leaned forward, her sharp blue eyes were hardened by experience. The middle-aged former noble sputtered, nonsense. We're nobles after all. Everything will be fine. Arch slumped, then brought a hand up and rubbed her forehead when it bowed forward. Father, we're not nobles. We lost that place in the world. We need to sell this house. We could get a good price for it, and you could live well off of that for a lifetime if we just pay off our debts. No. Her father shouted and slammed a plump fist down on the table. Never. Dear. Arch's mother said, but to her daughter, not her husband, you must understand, this is the only life we know, there's no other place for us. Arch felt a hint of pity rise up to combat her anger at her father. Her voice became quieter, more daughterly when she answered, there needs to be, mother, there needs to be. Quadrica and Eureka can't live off your memories, and if you want me to keep coming back alive, I need to upgrade my equipment. I can't keep using all my money to pay off your debts forever. Why not? You're doing fine now, aren't you? Her father spat, and Arch felt her head hurt. Father, my team has upgraded their equipment twice in the last year. That is, let us take on better jobs that pay more money, but I haven't upgraded even once since we got started. If I can't keep up with them anymore because their equipment gets better and mine doesn't, they'll drop me the same way the bloody Emperor dropped our whole family. They wouldn't dare drop a noble's daughter, he said with a furious glare in his dark, deep-set eyes. We're not nobles. Arch wanted to scream at him, but instead she took a deep breath and appealed to the old idiot's innate bigotry against the lower classes. They're peasant workers. What do you expect? She asked. I'm a worker too, and a peasant, and you're not even a worker. Her contempt for him only grew when she saw that her statement worked and he became sullen. His face purple with anger at an insult that hadn't happened, to a house that no longer mattered. All we need is for the bloody emperor to die. Her old man growled through gritted teeth. This is all his fault, all of it. He cast us out for nothing, but it's not done. We're the last, and we will outlast him. Arch flopped back in her cream-colored expensive chair, with the purges of the nobles and their replacement with elevated commoners of various talent and utility. Some of the old guard, like her father, had taken it hard. Their luxurious house was now the last one in the area to be occupied. Others were empty, sold off or forcibly reclaimed by the emperor when the occupiers were executed. Some had been smart, and gone on to live quiet lives, using the sale of their estates to fund comfortable retirements, pay for the education of their children, and to attempt to restore their status by drawing the emperor's attention through merit, or through their children's merits. Arch could feel nothing but envy for those families. They are the smart ones, she thought, and shoved the coins the rest of the way across the table. The clinking noise they made when he snatched them up was like the sound of rattling chains to the young Arch. She brushed her hand briefly through her short blonde hair and stood up. I'm going to go meet with my team. Promise me you'll only pay your debts and use the rest of that on necessary expenses, Arch said with resignation. Yes, of course. Only debts and necessities, her father said, holding the coin pouch in his palm. The hand bobbed up and down several times as he tried to get an estimate of the contents by weight. At least that much is progress. He's actually thinking about what's there instead of tossing it aside to spend later. Arch's hopeful thought rose up and held until she reached the front parlor of her family estate, and found that their aged butler was allowing a merchant into the house. The plump man was getting richer off her increasingly poorer family, and he had the gall or decency to tip his round blue felt hat to Arch as the one he knew was making it possible. Arch wasn't sure which it was, nor did she speak to him, only nodding in return as she went back out into the streets of Winter again.